The supreme leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, was killed by an Israeli missile attack in Tehran after attending the inauguration ceremony of the new president of Iran before this. In January of this year, the deputy head of the Hamas political bureau, Saleh al-Arouri, was killed in an Israeli airstrike on Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. It can be said that everyone is accustomed to such decapitation operations by Israel. Why is Israel so keen on conducting assassinations? Different from the cognition of most people, modern Jews are not a single race. Due to the invasion of foreign tribes, the Jewish tribes in the Middle East experienced a long period of exile. During this process, they intermingled with the ethnic groups along the way, making modern Jews no longer a pure race. However, some Jewish believers firmly believe that anyone with Jewish blood or who converts to Judaism should be regarded as a Jew and advocate the restoration of the former Jewish state. Especially in the 19th century, the ideology of Zionism continued to emerge. The Zionists believed that Mount Zion in Jerusalem was the former residence of Jehovah and advocated the return to Jerusalem. The movement they initiated was called the Zionism movement. This movement aroused the vigilance of the Ottoman Turkish Empire. Since 1882, the Ottoman Empire began to restrict the entry of Jews and prohibited the sale of land to Jews. However, driven by Zionism, more and more Jews entered Palestine. By 1908, Jews already occupied about 400 square kilometers of land, accounting for 1.5% of the total area of Palestine. The contradiction between Arabs and Jews continued to intensify. In 1913, Arabs held an anti-Zionist conference, accusing Jewish settlers of killing local villagers and seizing land. But the Ottoman Empire was powerless about it. In order to strengthen its control over the Middle East, Britain supported the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. In 1917, the British Foreign Secretary Balfour issued the Balfour Declaration, openly supporting Zionism and promising to support the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. This was tantamount to blatant support for seizing the nest of others. Therefore, after the end of World War I, the Jewish population in the Palestine region increased rapidly. By 1922, it had reached 83,000, accounting for 11.1% of the total population. Violent conflicts between Jews and Arabs became more and more frequent. For this reason, Jews also established the secret armed organization Haganah in 1920, specifically targeting Palestinians with violence. In 1920 and 1921, 47 Jews and 48 Palestinians were killed respectively in the conflicts between the two sides. The Wailing Wall incident in 1929 and the subsequent unrest resulted in more than 470 Jews and more than 340 Arabs being injured and killed, further deepening the hatred between the two sides. In 1931, the proportion of Jews in Palestine reached 18%. At the same time, the economic crisis in Europe and the wave of anti-Semitism forced a large number of Jews to flock to Palestine. In response, Britain restricted the entry of Jews in 1936, which aroused the dissatisfaction of Jews. How could Jews be at the mercy of the British? If the British support for Jews is not absolute, it is absolutely no support. In 1937, the world's first professional terrorist organization, Irgun, was founded by Jews and led by Avotins. It openly advocated the establishment of a Jewish state and the elimination of Arabs. This was the first terrorist organization in the modern sense. In the same year, the terrorist assassination organization LEHI also separated from Haganah. The targets of the attacks launched by these Jewish terrorist organizations included both the British authorities and Arabs. In July 1938, after the British authorities executed two Jewish terrorists, Irgun detonated a bomb in the Arab fruit market in Haifa in retaliation. killing 74 people and injuring 129, setting a precedent for human violent terrorist activities in the actions of Jewish terrorists. From April 1936 to 1939 alone, more than 3,232 Arabs, 329 Jews and 135 Britons were killed. In order to restrict the continuous influx of Jews into the Palestine region, Britain also intended to adopt a transfer policy and planned to transfer Jewish refugees to refugee camps on the island of Mauritius on November 25, 1940. The British Patria full of 3,000 Jewish refugees left Palestine and was preparing to go to Mauritius. After learning of this news, the Jewish commando under Haganah actually sank the ship with explosives, killing 267 Jewish refugees. The purpose was surprisingly to frame the Arabs, even ruthless towards their own people. This incident was recognized by historians as the world's first terrorist activity. Since then, Jewish terrorist organizations have continued to grow and differentiate. For example, senior members of LEHI formed the extremist organization Palma-CH, and senior members of Irgun, Stern, formed the Stern Gang, carrying out assassinations and attacks against the British and the moderates within the Jews in November 1944. The Stern Gang assassinated Lord Moyne, the British colonial minister in the Middle East, in Cairo. In October 1946, Irgun blew up the British embassy in Rome. In May 1947, Jewish terrorists blew up a prison and released 151 prisoners from the end of World War II to 1947. Jewish terrorist activities reached their peak, covering acts such as disrupting transportation, blowing up facilities, assassinations and hostage-taking of prisoners, causing many civilian casualties. On July 22, 1946, members of Irgun disguised as Arab merchants used 500 pounds of high explosives to blow up the King David Hotel, where the headquarters of the British Mandate for Palestine and the intelligence agency were located, resulting in 91 deaths and 45 injuries. At the same time, they also detonated another bomb in a nearby street, causing the deaths of a large number of civilian onlookers. The mastermind of this violent and terrorist incident was Menachem Begin, who later became the Prime Minister of Israel. What is even more ironic is that he even won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1978 on March 3, 1948. Jewish terrorists drove a truck loaded with bombs into the Salam building in Haifa, killing at least 34 Arabs. This incident was identified as the first car bomb terrorist attack in human history on the evening of April 10 of the same year. 138 fully armed members of Irgun and the Stern Gang attacked the Deir Yassin village in Jerusalem, massacred 254 Arabs on the spot, and took more than 20 people for public display before killing them. The commander of this operation was still Begin since then. The terrorist activities of Jews have shifted from individual terrorist attacks to planned, organized and large-scale military cleansing operations. Within just 4 months, they bloodily washed 385 villages near Jerusalem, forcing 400,000 Arabs to flee. On May 14, 1948, Israel was established. Do you think Zionist elements would stop there? How naive. On September 17, 1948, Begin commanded Zionist elements to shoot and kill and mediator Count Bernadotte in Jerusalem. And Bernadotte had rescued more than 6,000 Jews from Nazi concentration camps during World War II. The story of the farmer and the snake was staged again in October 1953. Israeli fighter jets shot down a Swedish DC-4 civilian airliner, and all 35 passengers on board were killed. This was the first incident in human history where a military aircraft shot down a civilian airliner. In December 1954, Jewish terrorists hijacked a Syrian civilian airliner and forced it to land at Tel Aviv airport. which became the earliest hijacking case in the history of human aviation during the Middle East War in 1967. Israel secretly killed 400 Egyptian prisoners of war. To cover up the crime, Israel even sank the U.S. Liberty electronic reconnaissance ship that was conducting reconnaissance nearby, killing 34 U.S. soldiers and injuring 171. In 1968, the Jewish terrorist organization Israeli Commandos blew up 13 civilian aircraft of Arab Airlines at Beirut Airport in Lebanon, forcing Beirut International Airport to close in February 1973. Israeli fighter jets shot down a Libyan Boeing 747 passenger plane with missiles over the Sinai Peninsula, killing 108 passengers and crew members on board. With only 5 survivors in 1982, Israel carried out a 40-hour-long massacre in the Beirut refugee camp, with an estimated death toll of up to 4,000. The commander, Sharon, later became the Prime Minister of Israel. In addition, Israel has created countless bloody incidents in Palestine and killed countless civilians. Apart from those publicly reported internationally, there are also many cases that cannot be counted. In fact, basically all successive leaders of Israel came from early underground armed and terrorist organizations, such as Haganah and Irgun. Well-known figures such as Ben-Gurion, Begin, Rabin, and Peres all basically had the blood of innocents on their hands. And the Likud group, where the current Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, belongs, is the incarnation of Irgun in the new era. It's no wonder that Churchill issued a statement in London at that time, saying that if our support for the Zionist ideal only brought a wisp of smoke from a pistol, then we undoubtedly created a group of scoundrels comparable to Nazi Germany by ourselves. Just think. A group of people who established a country relying on terrorist activities. When encountering a real opponent, how could they possibly control their own hands?